We're on Daf Daled Amud Alef in the Bavli, 12 lines from the top, by the word Tnan towards the end of the line. We brought so far the opinion of Rabba and Rava. What is the reason why the aid, by the shliach, why the messenger who brings a get from Dinas Hayam, from overseas there to Israel, he has to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei neftam, that in front of me the get was written and signed. According to Rabba, lefi she'ein b'kiyim lishma, because they don't know the rule of the get having to be written for the wife, for the sake of the wife, for her name. According to Rava, it's because there's no aid. We don't have aidim. Aidim we're not mitzuyin l'kaimoi. So he takes the place of aidim. So according to Rava, he's testifying that it was the Shema. According to Rava, he's instead of aidim, he's believed like two witnesses. The Chum gave him the kach to be believed like two witnesses. It's not. It said in the Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel says, even if you bring a get from Rekem and Chager, you also have to say b'fanei nichtav b'fanei neftam. Tanakama said that if you bring the get, Tanakama said if you bring the get in Dinas Hayam, Rabbi Gamliel includes mina Rekem and mina Chager, and Rabbi Eliezer even from Kfar Ludim to Lud, which is very, very close to each other. Abai explains, we're talking about what's the machlokes between Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer. We're talking about cities that are right next to Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbi Eliezer it's according to the case of Rekem and Chager is mamish right next to Eretz Yisrael, and the case of Rabbi Eliezer from Kfar Ludim to Lud is not only is it next to Eretz Yisrael, it's even muvla, it's even within the gvul. So if you have Rashi explains you could have certain cities that are on the eastern boundary, and some of them jut out from each other. And if you draw a straight line from one city to the other, there's going to be other cities which are not in Eretz Yisrael but are included in that straight line. That's called muvloi. So, like, so to speak, absorbed into it. And according to Rabbi Eliezer, nevertheless, it's not considered Eretz Yisrael. Like Leo would say it is, Eliezer would say it isn't. Tanakam would say b'chlal, as long as it's samach, as long as it's next to Eretz Yisrael, it's considered to be part of Eretz Yisrael when it comes to lishma. How far? I don't know, but if it's close to the boundary. According to Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rabbi Gamliel, even if it's close, you still have to say b'fanei neftam, but if it's absorbed, if it's within the boundary, then you won't have to. Rabbi Eliezer says, even if it's with muvla, absorbed within the boundary, you're still going to have to say b'fanei neftam. Well, Rabbi Bar Chana said, I saw this place. The city that Rabbi Eliezer was talking about, from Kfar Ludim to Lud. It was like the distance from Beikubi to Pumbedisa, very close, a very close distance. The Tanakama is over Hani Loit Tzorich. It's a raya that the Tanakama holds. These cities are not necessary. So what's the machlokes? We have a three-way machlokes, and more generally a two-way machlokes.
Shalom Aleichem. Sorry, I came in a little late.
Yeah. Where are you, David? I just came in now.
Oh, yeah. We're on Daf Daled Amud Alef.
Which Gemara? Yerushalmi or Bavli?
Daf Daled Amud from the Bavli. We didn't start the Yerushalmi yet.
Yeah, I was looking for the Yerushalmi. I wasted a lot of time.
Where are you on Daled Amud Alef? How many lines?
It's about 20 lines on the top. The line starts Tzorich. Right by the Likutei Rashi.
I've got Tzorich. Tzorich, my love, Baha Kamiflige.
Right. So L'choiro, my love, Baha Kamiflige. Why do we say that there's a machlokes here between Tanakama and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Gamliel? Tanakama, Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Eliezer. The opinion of the Tanakama is the whole reason why the shliach has to say b'fanei neftam, the reason why the shliach has to say that it was written in front of me and it was signed in front of me, the get that he's bringing from overseas, is because people don't know that it has to be for the sake of the woman, the miyuta, like we explained yesterday, the minority of the minority. But if it's close to the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, even if it's not mamish within the borders, people are going to be bucky. They're going to know this din. The opinion of Rabbi Gamliel or Rabbi Eliezer is because there's no Eidim Mitzuyim L'Kaima. these are also not shchiche because you can't go across the border. There's a problem with the border. So we get tight choice. So that's the machlekes. You could say maybe this is even the machlekes in Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Gamliel, if it's absorbed within the boundaries because they're still bucky, so therefore it's okay. He doesn't have to say b'fanei nechtam. Like Kfar Ludim the Lud, Rabbi Eliezer will say no because you can't go across the border freely, so there's no edim. Says the Gemara, each one will explain it according to their reasoning. Rabba will explain according to his reasoning. The Kuli Yalmo, all three opinions hold that the reason why you need to bring the shliach needs to say is because they're not fluent with the reasoning. People in Chutz La'aretz are not fluent with the reasoning, and that has to be done for the sake of the woman. So what's the reasoning behind this machlekes? Here they're arguing about this. Tanakama sover hani given this smuchais mikmer comedic. According to the Tanakama, because it's close by, as long as it's near the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, they're fluent. But also Rabbi Gamliel will say if it's absorbed within the boundaries. We explained, for example, if the border is has cities not in a straight line but jutting out, and if you would theoretically draw a straight line, there would be other cities which are out of Eretz Yisrael absorbed in it. Muvlois, that's called they're absorbed within the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, then Gmidei. But Smucha is like Gmidei, but if it's next to Eretz Yisrael, it's not Gmidei. They don't know this halacha. The minority are not going to know it has to be Lishma. Also, Rabbi Eliezer says, even if it's Muvla, so that you don't differentiate. In other words, he doesn't disagree with the reasoning, even though they do know the halacha that has to be Lishma because their Muvlois are so close. Nevertheless, so you shouldn't differentiate anything that's chutzar. It's the shliach has to say b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. That's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. What about Rava? Rava metadatz l'taimei. Rava will also explain all three opinions according to his reasoning, which is because ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimai. From chutzar, he has to say b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam to establish the document, to establish the validity of the document. So all three of them are arguing based on this reasoning. What are the three opinions? All of them hold the reason why the shliach has to say b'fanei nechtam is because ein edim mitzuyin l'kaimai. Tanakama holds hani given the smuchais mishkach shchiche because it's close to the border, even though it's over the border. Nevertheless, it's common. But also Rabbi Gamliel lemeimar muvloi shchiche smuchais lo shchiche. Gamliel will say, no, even if it's close to the border, lo shchiche, but muvloi shchiche, if it's absorbed within the boundary, that it is common to have edim. But Rabbi Eliezer will say, you don't want to differentiate between the different boundaries of over Eretz Yisrael. So even though there is edim that go back and forth because it's muvla, we don't say that it's not common. Nevertheless, surely tachlik dinasiyam. Nowadays, like in a modern country, it's no matter even if it's muvla, we'll say if it's over the border, it's probably not so common. Although there are some cities that the border is like literally right over. It's like a double city, one on either side of the border. Maybe it is more common to go back and forth, more than just a nearby city. Like the Niagara Falls, I would say, is a good example. Mm-hmm. You have the American side, the Canadian side. It's probably much more common in that border to go from one place to the other than in other cities.
Yeah. All they have is a bridge, pretty small bridge separating the two.
Yeah.
I remember I walked across the bridge several times into the American side.
Right. So we're now, of course, we have the opinion. There's more opinions. Those are the first three opinions. From Kfar Ludim to Lud is talking about Lois. Chum say, even if it's mehegmonia, like Shimon Gamliel says, mehegmonia, from one part of the city to the other part of the city. There's no free transfer. Okay, that's talking about the Chutz La'aretz. Okay, that's different. Okay, so now we're going to the next opinion, actually, which is the fourth opinion in the Mishnah. It was stated in the Mishnah, the next part of the Mishnah. Enu tzorach sheyoymar b'fanei nichtav v'b'fanei nechtam elo hamevi mimdinas hayam. According to the Chachamim, you only have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtam if you're bringing from Dinas Hayam from overseas, v'hamoilech, and you bring from Eretz Yisrael to overseas. According to the Tanakama, if you bring from Eretz Yisrael to Chutzar, you don't have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtam. So that's machlekes. According to the Tanakama, if you bring from Eretz Yisrael to Chutzar, he doesn't have to say only from Chutzar to Eretz Yisrael. According to the Chachamim, in both directions, you're going to have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtam. What's the reasoning behind their argument? My love, probably this is what they're arguing about. According to the Tanakama, the reason why you have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtam is because in b'kiyum lishma, v'hani gmire, and people coming from Eretz Yisrael are gmire. They're learned. Umar savar lefi she'ein eidim mitzuyim l'kaim. And according to the Chachamim, it's because there's not enough witnesses to establish the validity of the shtar. And based on that reasoning, based on that reasoning, based on the reasoning of the Fishen Edim Mitzuyim L'Kaim, right? It doesn't matter which direction you're going. You can be going from Eretz Yisrael to Chutzar, or from Chutzar to Eretz Yisrael. In both cases, the Shlich is going to have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtav. So why don't we say that the Tanakama holds like the reason of Rabba, and the Chachamim hold like the reason of Rava? Says the Gemara, Rabba metaretz l'taimei v'Rava metaretz l'taimei. Rabba will explain it according to his reasoning, and Rava will explain it according to his reasoning. Rabba metaretz l'taimei. Rabba will explain according to his reasoning. The chuli amol lefi she'ein b'kiyum lishma. Everybody holds it's because people are not learned. They don't know it has to be. They don't have people don't know that it has to be l'shem the isha for the sake of the name of the woman. Argument is, are we geyser? Do we make a gzeira to say that even if you're bringing from Eretz Yisrael, you should have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtav? Tanakama summer loikos. According to Tanakama, we don't make such a gzeira because people know the difference between going from Eretz Yisrael or going to Eretz Yisrael. People are not going to make a mistake. People will know that if you're going from Chutzar to Eretz Yisrael, that's when you have to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtav, but not from Eretz Yisrael to Chutzar.
But the boundaries weren't that well indicated in those days, or what do you call it? They weren't that well marked, I guess, right? Boundaries between countries.
Probably not the way it is today.
Yeah, so something like areas in Manitoba where you can cross in the United States and not even know you're
there. I'm sure in Ontario also. I'm sure there's massive stretches of the border that are not marked. I'm sure there's massive stretches of the American-Canadian border that are not marked anywhere.
Yes.
Probably for thousands of miles, there's no boundaries.
Yeah. We probably have more migrants, but because of our climate, our cold climate, we don't have as many as in the United States. They're crossing all the time, right? Millions of them.
Well, also very simply, the United States shares a border with the whole South America. We only share a border with the United States.
Well, that's what I mean.
If somebody's already in the United States, why would they go further up north? Like you're saying, right?
Yeah.
The Rabbana Basroi Sabri, the Chachamim, the later Chachamim, they hold that we make a gzeiro that even though it's not necessary to say b'fanei nichtav v'fanei nechtav if you're coming from it as well, because people know they're gemira, they know you don't have to. They know you have to do lishma. Nevertheless, make a gzeira. But Rava metaretz l'taimei. Rava will explain it according to his reasoning. The chuli amol lefi she'ein eidim mitzuyim l'kaim. Everybody holds ein eidim mitzuyim l'kaim. Rabbanan basroi lefrushei time and Tanakama dasi. Really, it's not a separate opinion. It's the same opinion. The Chacham Maimer is explaining the reasoning of the Tanakama. It's the same shita. It's the same opinion. So now we finally have the first major. We had other nafkaminas. We mentioned 3 nafkaminas on Daf Beis and Beis, but here's another nafkamina. According to Rabba, there's 2 different opinions. The Chacham hold you don't have to say it if you're going from Eretz Yisrael to Chutzar. It's the Tanakama, but the The Tanakama holds that, but the Chacham say you do because make a gzeru, make a decree. According to Rava, both opinions say you need to because you don't have witnesses. So he needs to be instead of the witnesses. And the Chacham are explaining the Tanakama. Okay, so now we'll bring the next part. Tanan, it says in the Mishnah, the next part of the Mishnah, maybe getting dinim sayam. If you bring a get from one part of Chutz Haaretz, from one city to another city, one province to another province, you're going to have to say if it would be within the same province, you wouldn't need it. According to Rava, it makes a lot of sense. You don't need it because it has to do with witnesses. According to Rava, that it's the reason why you have to say it is because they're not bekiin. They don't know it has to be the Shema. It's a big question. Why wouldn't they have to say it? Says the Gemara, he'll answer like this. Don't say that within the same province in Dina Sayam you don't need it. Rather say within the same province in Eretz Yisrael you're not going to need it. For example, within the Yehuda or within the Galil. So that's how you're going to have the tight choice. Says the Gemara, we say that's stated clearly. That's not a diuk. We don't need to have an inference from there. It says, maybe get Eretz Yisrael. If you bring a get in Eretz Yisrael itself, you don't have to say Fanei. Says the Gemara, you would think only b'di'evet, because it says ha maybe. But l'chatchila, if you did it, but l'chatchila, if you want to ask us our opinion, we would tell him not to. Says the Gemara, Kamash Malon, that even l'chatchila you're allowed to go limdina in Eretz Yisrael. That's the Mishnah Yisrael teaches us that within Eretz Yisrael you don't need to say b'fanei nechtam. Some people ask it a different way. If it would be from dinim to Medina and Eretz Yisrael, you don't need, not within the same dinim, from province to province. I might have said within the same dinim. From province from Yehuda to Galil, from Galil to Yehuda, within Eretz Yisrael, Leitzarech. According to Rabba, it makes sense. According to Rabba, it's a question because says the Gemara, don't say from Dinah to Medina and Eretz Yisrael. You don't need the dik will be within the same province, from city to city, the same province. And overseas, you don't need, according to Rava. You're going to say that you need it from Dinah to Medina, but you're going to say from Yehuda to Galil and Eretz Yisrael, you're going to need. Listen, Medina, stop. So why don't we say if you bring from one Medina to another, you need instead of saying B'chutz Haaretz? Says the Gemara, within the provinces of Eretz Yisrael, from Yehuda to Galil, Galil to Yehuda, for example, you don't need. Because you have the Oila Regalim, it's common to have Eidim L'Kaima.
So is this discussion based on the fact that Eretz Yisrael, the rove are mumchin, so therefore you don't have to add lefanai nichtam, right? Because they have mumchin Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. So my question is, what about in Bavli? You would have mumchim there, right? The Jewish community. So would you have to say it there?
That's a good question. The Gemara is going to talk about it on Daf Vav.
Oh, they talk about it later.
Yeah. It's a good question.
I got ahead of myself. I apologize.
Says the Gemara, if you have Oile Regalim, you're good to go. Because you have Oile Regalim, even from province to province in Eretz Yisrael, it makes sense. Says the Gemara asks, this only makes sense when the Beis Mikdash is around. After the Beis Mikdash was destroyed, what are you going to say? Because you have the Bote Dinim, that also causes the Eidim to go from one place to the other, because they want to be judged Beis Avad, even from one province to the other. Even though you could argue each province should have their own Bote Dinim. but the Beis didn't cause the people to travel from one province to the other, and to have Eidim, to have witnesses. Okay, so now we go on. So now it says in the Mishnah, the next part of the Mishnah, Shimon Gamliel says, even from one part of a city to another part of a city where there isn't free transport. Rabbi Yitzchak says there was a certain town in Eretz Yisrael that was called Asosius. There was two rulers who was divided into two, that they didn't allow free transport. Therefore, they have to say from Higmonia to Higmonia because of this town of Asosius. You're going to have to say b'fana nichta, b'fana nechta. According to Rav, it makes sense. The whole problem is witnesses. So in Asosius, from one part of Asosius to the other, you're going to need witnesses. According to Rav, it's a question. Because according to Rav, he says it's because Ein B'ki and Lishma. The reason why he has to say b'fana nichta, b'fana nechta is because the people don't know. That is only in Chutz La'aretz. Within Eretz Yisrael, that shouldn't be that shouldn't be a problem. So why do we say from one part of Asosius to the other? So now finally the Gemara is mechadish Rabba Islay de Rav. Rabba holds like Rava. Rabba holds like both opinions. So he'll say in a where you don't have Eidim, there's an issue. Rabba doesn't hold like Rabba. Rabba says if there's shchiach to have witnesses going from one place to the other, we're not worried. But if it's he's not worried about to lishma. Rabba's on top of the witnesses, he's worried about lishma. So that's what the Gemara says. Elamai benayu. What will be the difference between them? Ikebenayu dasyu abei today. If two witnesses bring it, so according to Rabba, there's no problem. According to Rabba, you're still going to have the issue of lishma. Inami ba'izim dinim dinasayam. Another difference will be within the same province from dinasayam. Again, according to Rava, there's no issue. According to Rava, there is an issue because Medina Sayyam, people are not Biki and Lishma. They don't know what has to be done for the woman's name. The Gemara goes on. Tanan, it says in the Mishnah, we're 3 lines on the bottom of Daf Dalet Amud Beis. And maybe get Medina Sayyam, someone who brings a get from overseas, and he can't say that it was written in front of me and signed in front of me. As long as he has witnesses, he's kind of you could establish the validity of the document by the signature. But we're wondering, what does it mean that he can't say? Well, what is pshat that he can't say? Why can't he say? We're on the next page. Hey, if you're going to say that he's not able to talk, he's a deaf mute. Chedesh by Yisuy Gitu, could a Chedesh bring a get? But Nan didn't it say in the Mishnah, Kol Kshedim Havis a get? Everybody's kosher to bring a get, Chutz Mechedesh, except for a deaf mute, a shoita, or a katan, a minor, because they don't have das. The only way you can make a shliach is if he has das, is if he has intellect. Rav Yosef explains, what are we talking about? He gave it to her when he was a bikeach. That's a very uncommon case. So the nesina was good. The giving it over was good. The shliach fulfilled his shlichus. The shliach lehilocha fulfilled what he had been appointed to do. Well, he speak loimer b'fana nichtam b'fana nechtam. He didn't have a chance to say b'fana nichtam b'fana nechtam because you have to say it in front of 2 or 3 people. Ad sheni scharish until he became deaf mute. Something happened to me. He had a medical problem. According to Rava, that he's purely worried about witnesses. That makes sense. All you need is witnesses. According to Rava, it's a question because according to Rava, you also have to be biki and lishma. You have to know what was done for the woman's sake. So how could we say yiskayin b'chaismo? How can we say to establish it with the signatures? Sorry, 1 second. So the Gemara, sorry, we're 3 lines from the top. Bamar of Yosef, Kocha b'may skina and Koin shenosnei lo kishubikeach v'lis begleim b'fana machini scharish. They gave it to her when he was a bikeach, and he didn't manage to say b'fana nechtam until he became a deaf mute. Says the Gemara, l'Rova nichal l'Rabba kasha. According to Rava, it makes a lot of sense because all you need is to be mekaymet. All you need to do is establish the validity of the witnesses, and that's all. That's what you're doing. According to Rabba, it's a question because Rabba says you also have to know bikin lishma. The Gemara answers, talking about after they knew, this is talking about later on, and eventually even the people in Chutzlaretz understood that you have to do it lishma. Says the Gemara, yochel nami. If so, even if he's able to say, we shouldn't require him to say b'fana nechtam as long as you have witnesses. So why do we say b'chlal that they should have to say b'fana nechtam if you have witnesses? Says the Gemara, it's a gzeira that maybe they'll forget again. So therefore, we always require the shlich, if he's able to say, to check and to say that it was done lishma. Says the Gemara, yochel nami. If so, even if ain't a yochel, even if he's not able to, we should require. Even if any yochel, even if he's not able to say b'fana nechtam, we should require it and we should cancel the shlichus. We should say it's not a good get. It says the Gemara, somebody who was a pikeach that he had das and then he became a deaf mute. That's something that's not common. Something that's not common, the chacham are not going to make a gzeira. It's interesting. L'chayra, you could argue also that Rabba holds of both reasons. You also have to be the shlich is necessary in order to be mekayim. But l'chayra, as long as you have 2 witnesses, that reason wouldn't apply. It's only the reason of the shema that applies, and because the chum were afraid that people might forget again, they kept their gzeira. It's not common for a woman herself to bring the get. Let's say the husband gave it to his wife, the get, but he says it's only valid if you bring it to Beis. That's what the husband told the wife. It's not, it says in the Mishnah, the wife herself brings her get. She has to say b'fana nechtam. So why should she have to say it? We don't want to differentiate between different shlichuyos. So even though it's not common, we're going to make the woman say it. But in this case, he's not able to say it, so therefore we'll be lenient. Yochi bal nami. If so, even the husband, aloma tanya who wants Gittin, he himself who brings his get, he doesn't have to say b'fana nechtam. Let's say he wrote the get in dinas hayam, or they wrote it; it was written in dinas hayam. He doesn't have to say b'fana nechtam. Says the Gemara, what's the reason why the Chavim require him to say b'fana nechtam? Because maybe the husband's going to come and cast question on the validity of the get, and he was going to try to disqualify it. Now he's holding it in his hand, and he's going to cast question on it. According to Rabba, that the problem is According to Rabbah, the problem is that the husband might be toyin. According to Rabbah, there's no question. Says Rabbah says the reason why he needed is to be Mekayim the get, to establish the validity of the get, just to be Mekayim. So for sure, the husband, we're not worried the husband's going to ask questions. For sure, he doesn't have to say b'fanei nichta, b'fanei nechta. But according to Rabbah, the reason is lishma. Maybe the husband will be toyin. Maybe he's going to claim that I didn't know that the get has to be lishma. I only realized later. And so the Gemara answers, once he's bringing it himself, we're not worried about that. Going further on Daf Hey Amud Alef, Toshma coming here. Shmuel asks a question from Rav Huna. If you have two witnesses who brought a get, two people who brought a get from Dinas Yam, from overseas, two people who are shluchim. They're messengers to bring a get for a woman from Dinas Yam. Do they need to say in front of us it was written and signed, or do they not need to say? He said that they're not needed. They don't need. Why not? Why don't they have to say it? If they would say that he divorced her in front of us without a get, they could have just said, so it's a migui. They could have just said that he divorced her. So they bring a get, they don't have to say b'fanei nechtam, b'fanei nechtam. There's two of them. Says the Gemara, the Rava Nicha, the Rabba Kasha. According to Rava, it makes a lot of sense. It's all in order to establish the witnesses. So we believe two witnesses. According to Rava, it's a question. What about Lishma? What about the problem of having to say that it was done Lishma? Says the Gemara, we're talking about after they learn. Says the Gemara, if they learned it already, why two witnesses? Why not one? It's a gzero that maybe they'll forget again. Even two witnesses, two witnesses who bring something is not common. Something that's not common, the chum are not guys. The question we already asked. What about a woman? It's not common for a woman to bring her own get. It's not, it says in the Mishnah. She does have to bring. She who brings her get, the husband said it's only kosher to bring it in front of a bezin. She herself has to say says the Gemara, we don't want to differentiate between two different types of shlichuyos. In other words, shlichus dechad, Tosfos says. If there's one shliach, we're not going to differentiate between a man, a regular shliach, or the woman herself. But if there's two shlichim, it's already so different. The chum are not going to be guys. Frankly, the Gemara asks the same question we asked before. Yochi Bal Nami, the husband. What about the husband? Alamat Tanya. We saw it says in the Brisa. Who answers if he brings the get, he doesn't have to say it. Time of my Rabbanan answers the Gemara. Time of my Rabbanan. What's the reason why he has to say because the husband might come and cast question and make a puzzle. Now he's holding it in his hand. He's going to be ma'arer. He's going to ask questions on it. So no. Okay, we're going further. Toshma coming here. Proof. Hamayim get in Dinas Hayam. Someone who brings a get from overseas, b'nosnei law, and he gave it to the woman, and he didn't say the words if you could establish the validity through the signatures, it's kosher. If not, it's possible. The only reason why, so it seems like the only reason why they required is to be lenient, not to be strict. In other words, if you don't have the witness, they didn't say it, you could just rely on signatures. But according to Rava, it makes sense. As long as you have witnesses, you're good to go. That it was the signature. According to Rava, it's a question. Because according to Rava, what about Lishma? What about the fact that it needs to be said Lishma? Gemara says, here we're talking about after they already learned, even in Chutz La'aretz, it has to be the Shema for the sake of the woman. Didn't you say that there's a Gzeda, a decree that we're worried they might forget again? So they kept the Gzeda in place even after they learned? Says the Gemara, Kishanisas, we're talking about she already married, so because of the Gzeda, we're not going to make her leave her new husband. If so, why do we say that the whole reason of Bafana Nichtav is to be lenient, not to be strict, rather than to be lenient? We should have said, the Brisa should have said that we allow her to stay married if she got married. But otherwise, it is a stringency because of Lishma. He has to say Bafana Nichtav because it has to be for her sake. Says the Gemara, this is what the Brisa means to say. If you're going to say that maybe we should be strict and make her divorce her husband, her new husband, which means we're trying not to make her require Eidim that it was Lishma. Time of my the whole reason is the reason why the Chachamim say you need to say is to save you from the husband trying to cast question on the star. So if she didn't get married, she shouldn't get married. But here, the husband hadn't yet come. So because he hadn't yet come, we're going to make her get divorced just in case he comes? No, we're not going to say. If she didn't get married yet, we'll tell her not to get married. But if she got married already, then we're going to let her stay married. Because the husband didn't come, we complain. Okay, so again, just to review, we have this machlekes between Rabbah and Rava. According to Rabbah, it's both because there's no Eidim, we don't have witnesses to the Shliach when he says it's instead of witnesses, and also because they don't know it has to be done for the sake of the woman, even though they already learned this, it's a Gzeda that they might forget again. According to Rav, it's purely because of Befana Nechtam. What about the fact that they're not Bekin Lishma? I suppose he holds that in Chutz La'aretz they do know. They do know, everywhere they know that it has to be done for the sake of the woman. So the Gemara now says, we're 3 lines from the top of Amud Beis, of 5b. The plukta the Rabbi Yechon Rabbi Shuban Levi. This machlekes is also the machlekes of Rabbi Yechon Rabbi Shuban Levi. Chad Amr Levishain Bekin Lishma, v'Chad Amr Levishain Eid Mutzuin L'Kaimah. One opinion is because witnesses are not Bekin Lishma, and the other opinion is because we don't have witnesses to be Mekayim the Shtar. So one opinion is like Rabbah, the other one is like Rava. To Stayim, let us conclude that Rabbi Shuban Levi Dom of the Fishain Bekin Lishma. The Rabbi Shuban Levi is the one who says the Fishain Bekin Lishma, which is what we explained Rabbah's shita to be. How do we know this? That Rabbi Shimon bar Abba, I see Gittin the commit to Rabbi Shuban Levi. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba brought again in front of Rabbi Shuban Levi. Do I have to say b'fana nichtav that it was written and signed in front of me or not? He says it's not necessary. Was only said in the earlier generations that they did not know that it had to be done lishma for the sake of the woman. But in the later generations that there were bakin lishma, it's not necessary anymore. So the Gemara says, let us conclude that Rabbi Shimon Levi is the one who holds of the reason bakin lishma. It's a good proof. So now we have 2 questions on this. First of all, betizbara. First of all, what about didn't we say that Rabbah also holds of the reason of Rabbah, that it's instead of witnesses? Furthermore, so that's number 1. Why didn't Rabbi Shimon Levi worry about that? And furthermore, didn't we say that we're worried that things might go back to the way they were? Says the Gemara, there was really 2 witnesses. That took away the problem of being Mekayim. The only issue was about the Shema. This that we didn't mention him is because of his covet. So the Gemara will answer. So the Gemara will say, when you have 2 witnesses coming, like we said before, you don't need to say b'fana nechtam, because in such a case, it's not common. We're not going to be geyser. We're up to Daf Amud Beis in the Bavli. We're going to stop here in the Bavli, and we're going to go to the Yerushalmi now. We'll do a few minutes of the Yerushalmi. We're by the two dots, like maybe about 15 lines from the top. All right. Maseches Gittin, right in the beginning in the Yerushalmi. It's the same Mefarshim, the Ridva, the Moshe, the Karmenedo, the Ridvaz, is on my daf. All right, so I guess let me know when you guys have it. We're on Yerushalmi, daf Alef, Amud Alef, Maseches Gittin.
Tell me, we're right at the beginning of PT.
Yeah.
We haven't done it yet. We haven't.
We're starting now. Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, I was just remarking to Baruch that the Yerushalmi starts on Alef,
Right.
but not Bavli.
There's explanations of why the Bavli starts in daf Beis. Yerushalmi doesn't have that. So now we need an explanation why Yerushalmi is different. And so, according to the explanation of the Bavli starts in daf Beis, you have to explain why the Yerushalmi is different.
What'd you say? Last.
There's biurim why the Bavli starts on daf Beis instead of daf Aleph.
Yeah.
You have to tack on to that biur. Why is Yerushalmi different?
I don't know. Yerushalmi seems to be like most works.
Yeah, that's true.
Most of the books start an Alef, right? But,
Yeah.
Bavli seems to be different. Maybe that's a better question. Why is the Bavli different?
Very good. Yeah. Okay. The Yerushalmi says the Mishnah, I may be getting dinasiyam tzorch shayim v'vanechtam vanenef nischatem. Maybe a little bit of a different gear. You have to say in front of me it was written. A shliach who brings a get from overseas has to say in front of me it was written. In front of me it was sealed. It was signed. Even if you bring from Rekem Mechiger. Lezer Imra Filim Kvar Ludin Lulud. If you bring from overseas or from Eretz Yisrael to overseas, if you bring from one country to another, one province to another, bimdina sayam, umimdina sayam, or bimdina sayam in the Bavli. If you bring from one province to another in the Medina Siyam, even within one city, if there's rulers who don't allow free travel, you're going to have to say if it's in Chutz La'aretz. Rishon Gamliel is actually talking about even in Eretz Yisrael, like we said in the Bavli. There's a place called Asasonia, where there was rulers who divided the city into two, and he had to say okay. So the Gemara says, maybe get the kasha. Question is, the Yerushalmi asks an interesting question. Someone who brings a gift for his friend, a document of gift for his friend from Medina Siyam. Does he has to say the question is, what's so special about a get more than a regular document? Regular document, we don't have such a din. Why by a get do we say that you have to say it's different. Why? We're not bucky with the details. So therefore you have to say, so then we're going to ask him all the details if it was done properly. This is what we just mentioned his opinion, Daf Amud Beis in the Bavli. He holds L'fisha Bikin Lishma. It's a leniency that they were makel when it comes to the Mishnah, in order that she shouldn't have to sit as an aguna, because you don't have witnesses. So the aid will be instead of witnesses. He's believed like two witnesses. The Gemara Kasha. The Gemara asks the question, Manu Kal, this is a leniency. It's a chumrah. Why is it a chumrah? Because if he wouldn't say b'fan nichtam b'fan nechtam, he wouldn't allow her to get married on the basis of one witness. So now, because he says that you're allowing her to get married, says the Gemara. It's in other words, sorry, I didn't explain it correctly. It's a chumrah because you don't allow her to get married if he doesn't say b'fan nichtam b'fan nechtam. He has to say that. That's a stringency. You're putting a block in front of her being able to get married. Without this, she can't. The stringency that you're making for in the beginning, that you're requiring the shliach to say that it was written in front and signed in front of me. This is a leniency for her in the end. What's a leniency? If the husband is going to come and try to make an or he's going to try to make problems afterwards, it's going to be bottled, it's going to be nullified because the shliach already said, the chacham believed him. Says the Gemara, Rab Mona Sover maybe. Rab Mona just wanted to say, we're talking about specifically if he said, for example, that there's a t'nai together with the get, but then the husband's not going to be believed because the shliach's word is considered like two witnesses opposite the husband. It's a question. But let's say he says, I didn't write the get, and it's mezuyaf, and it's a forgery. We should believe the husband. If he says the get it's not valid, then we should believe the husband over the shliach. Says the Gemara, even if you're going to say that he's not believed, if it's that even if he says it's a forgery, we're not going to believe. That's only if ain't by mamish. What if yesh by mamish? Do we say? Let's say we see that there's room for what he's saying. He has like a proof, sort of, not a full proof, obviously, but there's mamoshes to his complaint. Are we also going to believe the shliach over the husband in every situation? Rabbi Yisrael Barboin answers, Mekivan the Tamar, the Taimo, Choymer Shechmarta Lemitchile Sheitzach Leim Van Nichtam, Ikalta Labasoif, Shimbo Va'arar Idere Bottle, Evelishanya, who because we already said that the reason of the shliach having to being required to be saying is a chumrah in order to make it easier for her to get married, in order to nullify any error that the Baal is going to do. It doesn't matter what the error is. We don't differentiate no matter what the husband comes up with, unless he has witnesses, obviously. But if it's just the husband's word, and even if it makes sense, doesn't matter what type of error it is, there's not going to be any difference. We believe the shliach kibay today. We believe him like two witnesses. That's what Rabbi Yosef Barboin answers. So the Gemara asks a very interesting question. What do you mean? What about? Well, how do you know that the shliach is giving a kosher document? Maybe he signed it with false witnesses. Or you could say a different shot in this question. Maybe the husband, this is the way the Pnei Moshe explains, maybe the husband is trying to mess her up. So maybe he signed it with false witnesses. So how does it help to say that b'fana nichtav b'fana nechtam? Maybe these witnesses are not true witnesses. Maybe they're edim psulim. Maybe not false, but maybe they're not kosher. Maybe they're relatives. How does he know? And until he says he knows who the witnesses were, how is the shliach saying b'fana nichtav b'fana nechtam going to help us?
Wouldn't he see that they're false witnesses?
What?
Wouldn't he see that they're false witnesses? The one who
not false. Maybe they're not kosher witnesses. Maybe they're relatives. How's he going to know? Until he knows who the witnesses are, how is he going to know? He's not saying he knows who the witnesses are. He's just saying it was signed in front of me. Doesn't know who the people are. Maybe the husband's giving witnesses that are not valid. So we're not worried that he's going to try to make her get married to like Gittin. The Bezin who chashid l'kal. We're worried that he's going to come in front of Bezin and say that the document is forged. He's going to say because he's going to try, because he knows this, because he knows that his error is not going to work, he's going to make sure to be mechasme beidim sheder. Let's say now we have a new question. Yerushalmi has a new question. Let's say together with the get, there was also a gift. There's also saying that he's gifting her some of his property. Let's say he has property in Eretz Yisrael, and he wrote in the document she should also get this amount of money, this amount of property. And the shliach said, do we say that because his ira doesn't work for the get, it's also not going to work to try to cast doubt on the gift? Or maybe just because his ira is bottled for the get, it's still going to work for the matana. Maybe you need kiyum b'chaisma. Maybe you need witness to recognize the signatures of the witnesses. Says the Gemara Tninan de Basra. We said later on. It says in the Brisa later on, and the Mishnah later on. Sorry. Both the divorce for a wife, the get for a wife, or a document of freedom for avodim. Both when you bring it from Eretz Yisrael to Chutz La'aretz, Eretz Yisrael, you're going to have to say b'fanechtam, and the Chum are going to believe the shliach. So the question is, when if there's a gift written together with the star of shichur for the eved, for the servant, do we say that even though his ear is bottled for the get, it's going to work for the matana? Or maybe fakert? Or are we going to say fakert? Ipcha, maybe we'll say adrab, maybe we'll believe him for the matana to take away the validity of the matana. So we'll also try to say that you can take away the validity of the get. It's a new question. It's a new spin on it. So the Gemara says, we'll compare it. We'll bring in another similar case. It says, let's say he wrote all of his property to two people together. In one document, he wrote, all my property should go to Reuben and Shimon, let's say. And the witnesses were kosher. I'm sorry. I skipped. I'm sorry. The Gemara goes on, going back. I'm sorry, 3 lines back. Kosav kol nechosav la'avdoi hadomer hu gitoi hu matnosei. When he writes all of his, let's say he wrote all of his property. Let's say he wrote all of his property should go to his servant. The din is, once you're giving him all his property, that means you're giving him also. His freedom is his freedom also. His freedom is included in that when you're giving him all of his property. The fact of the matter is, when he wrote, he didn't clearly say the eved is free. He just said he gets all my property. So is it considered like a get that he can't later on argue and say it's not valid? Or is it considered like a gift because it's like in the lashon of a gift to say that it is valid? It's a very interesting question. So now we bring in this case that there's a machloikis it's a Gemara Maseches Ksubis. What's the case? It says, if you wrote all of your property to two people together, you wrote Reuben and Shimon should have all my property. And you have Eidim that are kosher for one person, they're not relatives to that person, they're puzzle for the other person, they're relatives for the other person. So what do you do? Because you wrote them together in the same document. Rabbi B'Shem Rabami says that he's spalgan Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish. There's a machlekes between Rabbi Yechon Rish Lakish about this din. Because they're puzzle for one person, they're puzzle for the other, even though theoretically they're kosher with this for him. The other opinion is they're kosher for one and puzzle for the other. So we want to say this will be the same machlekes. According to the opinion that says that it's puzzle for both of them, the Eidim will puzzle for both of them, we'll also say that the Baal can't be ma'ira for both of them. According to the opinion that says you could split in the same document and say it's kosher for one person, puzzle for the other, You could also say by the Baal that he's able to be murder for one and not being able to be murder for the gift, not being able to murder for the get, but being able to be murder for the matana. Omer Rabbi Lazar Masnisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan. Lazar says there's a mission that supports Rabbi Yochanan. Our mission supports Rabbi Yochanan. Mash Ein Nimtza Echad Mem Korei V'Fosel Yidusim B'Teila. Afashloisha Nimtza Echad Mem Korei V'Fosel Yidusim B'Teila. Just like, again, I skipped. I'm sorry. Rav Mana Lei Mefarish. Rav Mana didn't say who says what. Rav Mana doesn't say what Rabbi Yochanan said and what Rish Lakish said. Rav Oven Mefarish. Rav Oven, however, says who said what. Rabbi Yochanan says because they're puzzle for one, they're puzzle for the other. Rish Lakish differentiates. He says the Edom that are kosher for Ruvain are kosher for Reuben. He gets half the guy's possessions. The ones that are puzzle for Shimon are puzzle for Shimon. He'll get half, even though the other guy's out of the picture, but he only wanted to give him half.
Does he only get half, or does he get all of it now because the other guy's out of the picture?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I'll try to look it up in Maseches Ksubis. He talks about it. Rabbi Lazar says, "Masnisa Messiah Rabbi Yochanan." There's a Mishnah that will support the Mishnah Maseches Makis will support Rabbi Yochanan that if you have a cat of Edom, a group of Edom, and one of them is puzzle, it disqualifies all of them. Just like if you have a group of two witnesses and one of them is puzzle, the other one is also obviously he's only one left. So to three witnesses, the Aethis is bottles. So to here, if they're puzzle for one guy because the other, it's in the same document, they're also puzzle for the other. So we'll have to say if the Baal is not able to be ma'oder for the get, he's also not going to be able to be ma'oder for the against the matana, against the gift. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha Omar, Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha said, we're finishing to the bottom, just a few more lines. He's spalgun Rabbi Chanina Chavrin to Rabbanim. Rabbi Chanina, the Chaver of the Chachamim, has a machlokes with the Chachamim. With the Rabbanim. One of them said, Rabbi Lazar, who brought this din, said, well, Rabbi Lazar, remember, he said he compared it to the Mishnah Maseches Makis, that if you have a three Edom together, one of them is puzzle, they're all puzzles. He compared it to that. That makes sense. The other opinion says no, it's not a good comparison. Rabbi Lazar, the opinion that says Rabbi Lazar said good. Nasa say the Zachas. It's one Edis. Sorry, Nasa say the Zachas of Ish Echad, but Edish about the Mitzvah about the Kula. It's like that opinion is it's similar. It's all the same thing. It's considered like one Edis because it's one star. So if you have part of an Edis that's bottled, all the other Edom are bottled. So too, if you have a part of one star that it's bottled, so too all the other part is also bottled. So it all comes together. It's like two Kitay because it's two people, even though it's the same star, but it's two people. If it's one Edis, it's one Edis. But if it's two people, or if it's like two things in the star, you can't compare it. Okay.